At exactly 2:47 on a flawless Saturday afternoon, my sister Elena pressed a glossy ultrasound image into my hands. And in that single ordinary gesture, my life split cleanly in two. The sun was pouring through the kitchen windows, catching the dust in the air, turning it almost holy. Elena's face was radiant in that way only expectant mothers glow, like they're carrying a private sunrise under their skin. She tilted her head, smiling so wide it hurt to look at, and asked the question that detonated everything I knew. "Isn't she beautiful?" Her voice trembled with joy, with certainty, with a future she already loved. I didn't answer right away. "I'm an MR specialist." Reminded myself of that as my eyes dropped to the image. 17 years of training. Board certifications. A fellowship in gynecological imaging. More than 20,000 scans analyzed over the course of my career. I read images the way other people read headlines, instantly, instinctively. My brain processing data before emotion has a chance to interfere. And what I saw on that celebratory piece of paper made my blood turn to ice. The shape was wrong. Not subtly wrong, not something you debate in a conference room. Horribly, unmistakably wrong. The texture, the density, the placement, everything was off. What Elena saw as the sweet curved profile of her daughter's face, the one she'd probably traced with her fingertip 100 times already, wasn't a profile at all. It was something else. Something solid where nothing solid should ever be. I didn't react. 15 years of delivering devastating news teaches you control at a cellular level. You learn to lock down your micro-expressions, to build a dam against the horror that wants to flood your face, because one wrong look can shatter a person. I forced my lips into a smile that felt like it didn't belong to me. "Where did you get this done?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Elena beamed, completely oblivious to the seismic event happening in my chest. "That new boutique in the plaza," she said. "Womb and Bloom, they do the 3D pictures and keepsake videos. It's so much nicer than a doctor's office. The rooms look like nurseries and they give you sparkling cider after. A strip mall. Not a hospital. Not her obstetrician's office." I pictured a secondhand machine bought online and operators with weekend certificates. I told her the picture was lovely, then excused myself. I wasn't looking for the bathroom. I was looking for her husband. I found Mark in the kitchen, sneaking a beer before the big reveal. His shoulders relaxed, his smile easy. "We need to talk," I said. He laughed. "What? Another lecture about Elena's diet?" I know she had one piece of sushi. "It's not going to... That is not a baby on the ultrasound." The bottle froze halfway to his lips. His face went blank, that blue screen expression of a mind trying to compute impossible data. I grabbed his arm, pulled him into the laundry room, and shut the door. Outside, the happy chatter of 50 guests became a muffled hum. Inside, it was quiet enough to end a world. "The mass in that image is solid," I said, my voice steady despite my heart hammering against my ribs. "Babies aren't solid. They're fluid spaces, developing organs. This is dense, uniform. It's in the wrong place. It's the wrong shape. It's the wrong everything." Mark sagged against the dryer, the color draining from his face. "But she felt it kick," he whispered. "She's been feeling it for weeks." I swallowed. Large masses create pressure shifts against other organs. Intestinal displacement. It mimics the sensation of kicking. But it's not a baby. It's the mass. He dragged a hand down his face. "So what is it?" I couldn't say the word. "Not yet. I don't know for sure. But Elena needs a real diagnostic scan at a real hospital. Tonight." He glanced toward the door, where we could hear Elena's bright, happy laugh floating in from the backyard. "She's going to be destroyed," he said hoarsely. "We have to let her have this moment. She deserves that much." He looked at me, his eyes mirroring my own horror, and finished the thought I was too afraid to voice. "Even if it's the last happy one she has for a while." We walked back into the party as co-conspirators in a terrible, necessary lie. The backyard was a wonderland of pink and blue streamers, balloons, a cake shaped like a tiny onesie. In the center of it all was a giant black balloon, swollen with an answer that was already false. Our parents were there. My mother was already crying happy tears. Friends, Cousins, neighbors, everyone who loved my sister had gathered to celebrate a future I knew didn't exist. Elena grabbed the giant pin, her face electric with excitement. She and Mark stood together, a perfect picture of love and hope. A perfect lie. Okay, everyone ready to find out. She called. 3. The crowd shouted. My mind screamed at me to stop it, to say something, to save her. But God forgive me, I didn't. The balloon popped. Pink confetti rained down in a soft, silent storm of lies. It dusted the grass, clung to everyone's hair, and coated my sister in the color of a future she wouldn't have. Elena burst into beautiful, devastating tears. A girl? She sobbed into Mark's chest. We're having a girl. I watched the confetti settle and felt my own heart break into 1,000 pieces. 2 hours later, I manufactured our exit. I feigned a family emergency at the hospital, the irony a bitter taste on my tongue. I need Mark to drive me, I said, holding up my empty glass. I've had too much to drink. Elena pouted. You're leaving? We haven't even cut the cake. I hugged her, careful, her belly pressing against me to remind me it wasn't a baby bump at all, just the swelling of something awful. I'll call you tomorrow, I promised. The lie tasted like ash. The drive was silent. I'd already called ahead, spoken to a colleague, explained everything in cold, clinical terms. They were ready. As the hospital lights rose ahead of us, harsh and unforgiving, my phone buzzed in my lap. A text from Elena. Is everything okay? You both looked so serious. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I stared at that glowing screen, at the innocence in her words, and felt the weight of what was coming pressed down on my chest until it was hard to breathe. I didn't know yet how bad it would be, how much it would change all of us, only that, by the end of the night, nothing would ever be the same. 3 months later, grief had taught me a different kind of silence. My mother, Margaret Vance, lay dying in a private hospital wing her own company had built, and the room smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive flowers that no one from her family had sent. While she faded, my siblings were busy. My brother Ethan, 2 floors down, was charming investors for his next big deal. My sister Victoria was across town finalizing a brutal eviction. 22 family members, all titans of industry, and not a single one could spare an hour for the woman who handed them their empire. They didn't send flowers. Just a sterile corporate memo of condolence, as if she were a retiring executive already erased from the letterhead. What they didn't know was that my mother had been planning for this moment for 15 years. As she took her last breath, a nurse handed me a sealed letter. Inside weren't just her final words, but the keys to the $1.36 billion empire they thought they controlled. My name was written there in my mother's careful hand. Clara Vance, 34 years old. The family failure. The afterthought. The one they laughed at during holiday dinners. I'd spent my life watching patterns and data while they poured concrete and steel, dismissing my work as a hobby. They never saw this coming. At the last family dinner before my mother got sick, Ethan had raised his glass and smirked at me. To Clara, he'd said, proof that even in a family of builders, someone has to be the furniture. The room had roared with laughter. Victoria had added, cool and cutting, she's not furniture. She's the abstract art no one understands. I'd smiled and said nothing. They didn't know that 2 hours earlier, I'd closed a $9.20 billion IPO. In my family, tech money wasn't real. Empathy was a liability. Uncle Richard had patted my shoulder. Not everyone can handle the pressure of the real world, he'd said gently. Now, sitting beside my dying mother, holding the letter that would change everything, I felt the slow burn of something dangerous settle in my chest. I had learned through my sister's pain and my own invisibility what truth cost and what silence could buy. Outside the room, my family continued their lives, confident in their power, unaware that the ground beneath them was already shifting. And as I folded my mother's letter into my pocket, one thought echoed through my mind, steady and terrifying.